Hi, everyone, and welcome to our monthly training series for JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services. We are presenting a webinar every month in 2026 about different aspects of the digital asset management capabilities of stewardship. And today's will be about project administration, which is relevant for Tier 2 participants, as well as Tier 3 stewardship participants who are using Stewardship STAM. There are 3 webinars in this monthly series, which we are repeating every quarter. You can find a recording of all of the previous webinars on the JSTOR YouTube channel, and it is also linked on your training handout. We will share the link to the training handout right now as everyone is getting logged into GoTo. I'll just put that in your chat box. Okay. You should see the link now in your GoTo panel. And if you can't find it, look at your GoTo control panel, which is probably on the right side of your screen. And there's an area with a question mark called the questions pane, which functions as the chat box. Okay, my name is Elizabeth Behrens, and I'm an education services lead here at Ithaca. I'm joined today by my colleagues Tisha Andrews and Lauren Lasaris, both from the Stewardship Services team, and they will be helping with questions today at the end of the training. After you exit the webinar today, you'll be taken to a brief survey, and we'd appreciate hearing your thoughts about how useful this session was for you. If you've taken our webinars before, you have seen the survey, and as always, I'd like to emphasize how much we value your input about our webinars. We use your responses to help us shape the content of our future webinars, and if you don't have time to take the survey immediately, it will also be sent to you by email in about an hour. Your reminder and follow-up emails from GoTo also contain a link to that training handout, which will include a link to the recording once it's available, as well as the questions and answers from today's Q&A and links to relevant resources on our support site. So here is today's agenda. I will be walking you through the basic functionality of project creation and management and stewardship. We'll be looking at everything you need to know about setting up and administering a project, and we will spend most of the time today in the stewardship site. Please feel free to follow along on your end if you'd like, as you can always create a project and delete it later if needed. And as I mentioned, there's that questions pane in GoTo where you can enter questions at any time, and Tisha and Lauren are going to keep an eye on your questions as they come in. We'll likely have about 10 or 15 minutes for questions at the end of the training, and feel free to enter questions or comments as you think of them. And now we are all going to turn our cameras off so you can see my screen a little better. So give us a moment to do that. Okay, we are going to actually start off today with a quick poll. Okay, I'm just interested in hearing from the people attending today how long you've been using JSTOR Stewardship or previously JSTOR Forum. We'll just give a few seconds for everyone to answer. Okay. Let's see. Looks like a good mix of experience with stewardship and forum. So that's great. And welcome to those of you who are new to using stewardship. All right. Thanks for participating in that. Okay. So we're going to begin today with covering creating projects. But before we get started, I'd like to try to clarify the terminology I will be using regarding projects, targets, and collections, since this is an area that is easy to get confused about. We call projects the content we are working with in stewardship. A project has a metadata schema or a set of fields with specified field types. The project is not visible to end users. A target is the destination for publishing content from stewardship. So the target includes the specific settings, including field mapping information, as well as download settings for end users in the published environment. A collection is the published set of records. For example, records that are published to JSTOR become a JSTOR collection, which is visible to end users, depending on your publishing settings. So we're going to go ahead and go into stewardship now. Okay. All right, so here I am logged into my stewardship account, and I'll scroll down so you can see I have a number of projects in stewardship already. And I'm going to start today by creating a new project. And the easiest way to do this is by clicking this big button that says Create New Project. And first, I'm given a choice about whether to create a brand new project, which I can customize on the next screen, or copy an existing project. So when you copy an existing project, that means you're copying that project's fields and publishing target setup, but you can make changes to any aspect of the project later if you prefer. So if you already have a project that is customized and your new project is similar, you may want to copy that existing project and then customize it as needed. Copying a project does not copy the contents of a project. It only copies that project settings. So in this case, for the demo I'm going to create a new project so you can see all of the steps involved. So I will leave new project selected and click next. Now I can name and describe the project. This name and description will only appear here in the digital asset management environment in stewardship. And the name can be different from whatever you decide to name your published collection. So I will name my project Special Collections and give it a brief description. I'm just going to copy and paste that I have ready. Okay, and I'll click next. Okay, so on this screen, I can choose the metadata schema that I'd like to start with. There are a few templates to choose from. And keep in mind, these templates are also customizable. So if you find any of them won't work perfectly for you, you can always make changes like adding more fields, taking any fields away, changing field types, and so on. The JSTOR template is the ideal template if you are planning to publish your content to JSTOR, as it will require the least amount of custom mapping because it is already set up to work seamlessly with the JSTOR environment. The Visual Resources template is based on the VRA core metadata schema for descriptions of works of visual culture. The Dublin Core template is, of course, based on the fields in Dublin Core. And the Archivision template is a template specifically for those institutions publishing Archivision licensed collections for their users. You can preview all of the templates by clicking the preview link beneath each one. And then you can see field descriptions, which may help you decide which template is best to start with for your project. And please keep in mind that no matter which template you choose, you can always make changes to the fields and field types. You can consider the template a starting point for your project and then customize it as needed. I'm going to use the JSTOR template for this project, and then I'll click Finish. Next, I can choose a destination for publishing. The options available are either publishing to JSTOR. I'm going to click this, close this error message because we don't need to look at that right now. The destinations are either publishing to JSTOR or publishing to an Omeka site. If you would like to set up publishing to an OAI server, please see this link for more details and contact us as directed here, and we can help you set that up. I'm going to be publishing to a JSTOR collection, so I'm going to leave JSTOR selected and click Continue. And on the next screen, you choose whether your collection will be accessible to everyone on the open web or only to members of your own institution, which means your institution's JSTOR users who have registered for their own accounts affiliated with your institution, or those who access JSTOR while authenticated through your institution. Because this is a demo project for the sake of this training, I'm going to make this accessible to only my institution. So I will select that option and then click Next. And now I'm asked whether to publish this as a brand new JSTOR collection, or if I want to add the content from this project to an existing collection I already have on JSTOR. I'm seeing my own institution's JSTOR collections here, which includes many test collections that we've done internally, but you will see your own institution's collections in this list if you already have any published JSTOR collections. I'm going to create a new collection today, so I'm just going to leave it on New and click Next. And now this screen is where you edit your collection landing page details. The collection landing page will display on JSTOR for anyone who can access your collection once you've published any content to it. I can show you what this looks like on JSTOR. So I'll just open JSTOR over here and browse collections. And I'll open this one. So this is Cedarville University's institutional landing page, and below are all of Cedarville's collections, and each, of course, has its own collection landing page. So, for example, this first collection is called 100 Years of Yellow Jackets. You can see the published collection, the items here, and then the title, representative image, and a description of the collection and the institutional logo. These are all the features you can customize for your own collection. So back in stewardship, the name and description I just entered for my new project are already populated here. But if I would like the JSTOR collection to be named or described differently, I can make any edits I need to. At the top of the screen, I can choose whether to allow downloads from my collection. To restrict downloads, I would just choose no downloads. Otherwise, if your content contains images, you can specify how large you'd like those downloads to be. I highly recommend you upload a collection image, as this will appear on your institution's landing page and will represent your collection. This could be one of the files in your project or a different representational image. I'm going to go ahead and upload one of my image files now. And you can also enter a caption, which will appear on your institutional landing page. And I have a caption ready for this image. Okay. When I'm finished with all of these settings, I can click Next. Now I need to confirm or edit the URL for the published collection. So this will be a link that I can share with others to access my collection directly. The URL is created automatically based on the title of your collection, but you can edit it if you like. Just click Next when you're ready, and then you'll be asked to confirm on the next screen, because once this URL is set, you won't be able to change it. So to confirm, click Finish. Okay. And once the project is, or the URL is confirmed, now the project and publishing target will be created. So I'm now taken to the option of mapping my publishing target. This means I'll confirm where the fields in my project will appear in the published JSTOR records. To do this, I will click Explore Mappings. Okay. So this is the mapping screen. On the left is the name of my publishing target. And you may see more than one target here. If you've already set up targets for a project, they would all appear here. When a target is selected, like this one is, on the right is the information about the fields in that target's collection. There are a number of column headers across the top. The first column, Project Fields, displays all of the fields in your stewardship project. Next to that is the JSTOR Fields column, which displays the default JSTOR collection fields to which those project fields are mapped. If you use the JSTOR template for your project, the mapping work has already been done for you. That's what I meant by saying the JSTOR template is the simplest template for publishing to JSTOR. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see that each one of these project fields has already been matched to its corresponding JSTOR field. If you do want to make any changes to a default JSTOR field mapping, you can click the button that looks like a link next to any of these field names. So I'll click this one next to title. And then if I wanted to, I could choose a different JSTOR field to map this project field to. We generally don't recommend this, as many of the JSTOR default fields have special functionality in advanced search and browsing to make your content more findable by users. If you aren't using the default JSTOR fields in those cases, then those features will not be available for the records in this project. However, if there is a different field in your project that you think is not a good match to any default JSTOR field, you could map that field to what's called a custom JSTOR field. So from within this mapping record, you would choose this radio button at the top that says use custom field label. And then that stewardship field will also appear on JSTOR with the same label that you have in stewardship. So I might need to do this if I add in new fields to this project that aren't yet mapped and don't fit any of the default JSTOR fields. I haven't done that though, since I've just created this project. So I'm going to just click X and get out of this window. So then you can just scroll down to review all of your project's fields and their mappings. The next column after JSTOR fields at the top is called attribute. And when this is used, it refers to a special additional label used in the JSTOR record for clarification. So for example, this group of fields here, extent, format, measurements, medium, and techniques, they've all been mapped to a single JSTOR field, physical attributes. But each one has been given a specific attribute, which will display on JSTOR next to their display values for clarification. If you are using default mapping, these have all been selected for you already, but you can click on any attribute to see what other choices are available if you'd like to make a change. The column called hierarchy level refers to browse categories within JSTOR, which are geography and classification. I'm using the JSTOR publishing target, so these have been mapped, but you can read more about this by clicking on that information icon. And then the order column refers to the order of any custom fields you may have, which will appear beneath the default JSTOR fields when published. I don't have any custom fields yet in this project, so I don't have anything to change here. And then finally, the required checkbox indicates that this field must be populated before you're able to publish a record. I can make a field required, so I'll make title required by checking that box. And then what that means is if I try to publish a record without having title populated, I'll get an error message and I won't be able to publish the record until there's data in that field. So when you're finished reviewing your mapping, just click Save. And now my project and target have been created. If any of this seems complicated to you, I wanted to let you know that we are actively working on improving and simplifying the target mapping interface. And I have a preview for you of some improvements coming to target mapping. So let's go back to the slides quickly to see it. So this is a screenshot of a design under development illustrating the newly streamlined mapping interface that is coming soon. The attribute and hierarchy fields will be within the JSTOR field dropdown. There's a new field reference panel. You can see it on the right side of the screen here to assist with selecting the JSTOR fields for mapping. And there's also going to be a preview mappings button, so you can see how your records will appear on JSTOR before publishing. These features are under active development, as I said, and we expect to release these updates in the next couple of months, and they might not look exactly like this design slide looks. If you were in the project administration webinar we held earlier this year in February, I spoke then also about how these updates are coming soon, and I'm happy to say that they are being worked on right now. So thanks to the stewardship design team for sharing this preview and letting me show it to you all again today. Okay, next we will take a look at my new projects fields to see if any changes need to be made. And here are some of the elements that you can change to your fields. Before we do that, though, I have another quick poll for you. About your metadata customization. So have you customized your metadata fields or mappings in stewardship before? Just give you 10 or 15 seconds to answer. Okay. Let's see the results. It looks like not a lot of customization yet has happened, but there's some interest in it, and a couple of you have done some customization. Great, thanks for responding. All right, so let's go back to stewardship to look at editing fields in more detail. Okay, So we are currently in the project settings area of stewardship, and I can always get back here when I'm within stewardship in a project, and I'll show you how to do that. So within my project, there's a project settings button at the top of the screen. And if I just click that, I'll go right back to that project settings area. The second tab on this page is called Fields. And I can scroll down this list to see all of the fields in my project, along with the field type, whether that field accesses any controlled list for cataloging, and a description of the field. To make any changes to any field, you would just select it and click Edit Field at the top. First, just a note here for any Tier 3 users who may be attending, if you're using a SQLite compatible project, you cannot currently add, remove, or edit the project's fields in those SQLite projects. We are planning updates to this in the future, but for now, editing a project's fields is only possible in non-SQLite projects. So I will go ahead and open the rights field, and I'll click Edit to open it. So here I can change the field type as long as I don't yet have any data in the field. I can change the label, which is the field name that appears in stewardship. And I could even add a default value if I wanted to. So a default value means is if I have information I would like to add to every new record in a particular field, like rights information, I could enter it in that default value field. The description can also be changed if you'd like to include any special instructions for your catalogers. The position refers to the order in which the fields will appear in the list here, as well as the order they will export to Excel. And then finally, there's a reference at the bottom to cataloging forms. If you'd like this field to appear on a cataloging form, you can check that box or uncheck it to remove it. And we're going to actually look at cataloging forms next. Okay. So next we're going to talk about cataloging forms. Let's have another very fast poll. See if everyone's paying attention to talk about your cataloging workflow. Let me open the right one. Who primarily does the cataloging work at your institution? Just for curiosity, is it you, or is it mostly librarians or archivists, student workers? Do you have faculty contributions? Okay, I'll just give it another second. All right, looks like it is a mix of roles, and librarians and archivists are mostly doing the cataloging work. All right, thank you for sharing. All right, so a cataloging form is the interface that catalogers use to enter metadata in your project. You can customize and create multiple cataloging forms as needed. So let's go back to stewardship to do that. All right. The next tab in the project settings page here is cataloging forms. So every stewardship project starts with a cataloging form called All Fields, and that contains all of the project's fields when the project was first created. If you add new fields to your project, they're not going to pop up in this cataloging form unless you actively add them. You may want to create one or two more cataloging forms depending on your workflow. Maybe one for faculty who need to focus on particular points of data, or a more minimal form for student catalogers. To orient yourself to this page, on the left here is the name of any cataloging forms that you already have. When one of them is selected, that form's fields will appear in the center of the screen. And then on the right side of the screen is a preview of how they will appear to catalogers in stewardship. So to edit this all fields form, I might scroll down to the preview and think that this page is going to be way too long with all of these fields listed one per row. So an easy change I can make is choose some fields that I'd like to have side by side instead. So in this case, I'll just do the first two fields, identifier and resource type. So I can click edit one at a time. And this looks similar to when we were editing fields, but this is just referring to the cataloging form setup. I mentioned wanting these to appear side by side, so I'm going to look at the field width and change that 100 to 50% and then click save. So you can see right away in the preview that that field is now half the width of the preview screen. Then I can go ahead and do the same thing for resource type. And now those appear side by side. So you can imagine if you have a lot of fields that you'd like to condense in that way on your cataloging form, it can make it much shorter and have less scrolling for your catalogers. You can also drag fields into a different order as needed. So if I want a title to appear at the top, I can do that and I'll see it right away on the preview. If you want to tinker around with your cataloging screen to make it more compact or easy to use, it's very simple to do. If you'd like to set up an additional cataloging form, maybe for a student cataloger who will be working with you, just click Add on the cataloging form side and then name your form. I'll name mine Student Catalogers and then click Save. So this new form is empty and I need to add fields to it for it to have any content. So I'll click the Add button in the middle and I'll add a few fields that I want my student workers to be able to catalog and then click Save. Then once I click OK, I can see a preview of that cataloging form on the right. And of course, I can customize that however I'd like. If there are any fields that you are not using in your project, you can just remove them from the cataloging form. So you don't have to see them when cataloging, and then your form will be shorter and won't take up as much space. They will still be available in your project, and you can always add them back later if you need to. So I'll go to that all fields form and remove a few fields that aren't relevant to my particular project. And just for this example, I'll take these page range fields out and click delete. And again, these are just being removed from the cataloging form, not from the project. They still exist in the project in case you need them again. You can always add them back into a cataloging form. Okay, so the next tab in project settings is about targets. But since we already set up our target, we're going to skip that. But remember, if you need to change any target settings in the future, you can always come back here. And then the next tab is called Project Users. You can manage user permissions and stewardship by adding or removing users, and you can manage user access by assigning users to particular projects, giving permissions for publishing, and even creating filters to specify what content they can access in stewardship. There are 3 kinds of roles in stewardship: an institutional admin who can access all areas of stewardship, including all projects, publishing destinations, and user management. Likely most of you on the webinar today are institutional admins. Project level users are full access users, which are also known as project admins, who can access all records, cataloging forms, and publishing targets within a project. And catalogers, who are limited to specific records, cataloging forms, and publishing targets. So let's go take a look at managing users in stewardship. Okay, so under project users, you can see a list of all of the users your project currently has. I just have one at the moment because I just created this project, but I can see that user's email address and role. I can add a new cataloger by clicking Add Users. And here I have an option of adding an existing stewardship user at my institution by using that dropdown. All of the stewardship users at my institution will appear here. But if I have a new user that does not appear in this list, I can go to the sidebar menu and choose Manage Users. That's under the admin menu in the sidebar. And here I can see my local users again. But at the top of the screen, I can choose Add Users. Now I just need to enter the email address of the new user. So I'm just going to enter a fake email address for the sake of this demo. Okay. I can choose whether they should be an institutional admin or not. I'll leave this person as not an institutional admin. And then I can choose what project specifically this user should be added to, and then what level of access to those projects that they should have. So I'm going to click on Add Project, and then I can select from the projects at my institution using the drop down. So we just created University Library Special Collection, so I'll choose that one. And here I can choose whether the user has the full access role. And this is what we are transitioning the project admin role to being called, as I mentioned. And it appears here because this page was recently updated to allow multiple users to be added at one time to projects. So you are seeing the updated full access name here, and it will soon be seen throughout stewardship. Or I can choose whether I want this user to be a cataloger. So I'm going to specify that this new user is a cataloger because I want to show you all of the cataloger options. I can assign this user specific cataloging forms if I'd like, and decide whether they should have access to any publishing targets that I created. So I'll give this user access to both cataloging forms and to this publishing target. If I don't give them access to a publishing target, they will not be able to publish. And then at the bottom is this area called view permissions. And that's where I can specify which records within the project this user has access to with this dropdown. Generally, most users leave this on all records in the project, but if you want to get very granular with permissions, you can determine whether users can access only their own records that they've created, only records they've created that others have not updated, or you can set up what's called a custom base filter. So what that means is I can choose what kind of records the user can access. For example, I can choose a particular field. In this case, I'll pick resource type, and let's say 3D model. So if I know this cataloger has a particular expertise area of 3D model cataloging, I can just set it up so only those records will appear to them. And then I will click Add Role. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about where you can access information about your content allowance, including your audio and video processing allowance and your published collections usage statistics, which shows you where your collections are being used. Let me jump back into stewardship first. Okay. So to access information about your content allowance, go to the admin area in the sidebar and click statistics. Here you can see how much space that you have used of your allotted amount. So in my case, in this demo account, I have 5 terabytes allotted and I'm using 1.7 gigabytes currently. You can also scroll down to see how many hours of your 250 annual hours of audio and video processing allowance you have used. So to see a breakdown of this by audio and video, I can click details and see further information. And beneath this is info about your preservation allowance. And we're going to actually talk a little bit more about preservation in a moment. But first, we'll look at this link at the bottom to collections usage data. This will show you usage information about your published items. What you may already know is the collections usage dashboard. And I'm in a demo account where we'd never publish anything publicly. So there's no usage information displaying for me, but you should probably see some interesting information on your end about where the content you publish to JSTOR is being used. I'm going to go back to the slides to show you some slides of actual screenshots of actual usage data from a stewardship participant whose identifying information has been blurred here. So here is their data. And I'd first like to point out to you that this data came from a small university in the United States that had published fewer than 10 collections to JSTOR at the time these screenshots were taken. And they have a mix of public and institutional collections, and they have some really good usage showing here. As you know, when you publish to JSTOR, your content displays and is returned in search results alongside JSTOR content. And of course, depending on your publishing settings, whether you make your content publicly available to everyone on JSTOR or just to your own institution. You may see quite an increase in usage and evidence of your collections being accessed around the world, like we see here. So here in the dashboard, you can set a date range. In this example, it was set for the past year. And at the top of the screen, you can see the total number of requests. And that means the views and downloads across all of your institution's collections for the date range you specified. So in this case, items from this institution's collections were accessed more than 40,000 times in that year. Next to that is the percentage of total items in your collections that were accessed during this time. And in this case, it was 32%. And then there are the number of countries where users requested items in this date range. So in the past year of the time of this report, users from 127 countries accessed the items in this institution's collections. And then you can see the number of page views of your institution's landing page within the date range. So in this case, it was more than 1,000 page views. And then this line graph represents the number of item requests by collection for the date range you selected. I blurred out the collection names to keep the institution anonymous, but you would see your own collection names next to each representative color, so you could check on your usage at points throughout the date range you specified. And then further down on the page, you would see a list of top requested items in your collections over the period of the report, along with more information about what countries and institutions had the most requests of your items. And generally, the biggest user of an institution's collections is that institution itself. But it's interesting to see what the other institutions are. In this case, we see several institutions in the top 10 from the United States, but there are also institutions from Argentina, Australia, and the UK in the top 10. And then at the bottom is a chart showing usage affiliation, meaning whether users who accessed your items were from your institution, another JSTOR using institution, or those who were not authenticated through a JSTOR using institution. And you can download all of this info using the download button to download an Excel file, and you can even set up scheduled automatic reporting to be sent to you. Okay, so we'll just quickly talk about preservation. As you likely know, preservation is also now available for all participants. I'd love to know if any of the attendees today are using preservation services. I'm going to do one final quick poll. Just give like 10 or 15 seconds to respond if you're currently using stewardship preservation with Portico. Okay. It looks like a good number of you are already using it. That's great. And there's some interest in it as well. So great. Thanks for letting us know. All right. Let's go back to stewardship, and I'll show you quickly how to preserve your project with Portico. Okay, so to preserve your project with Portico, you first have to open your project, since preservation is done on a project level. So I'm going to go back to my project that we've been working in, and then I'll go back to the project settings area. So in project settings, you go to the preservation tab, which is the last tab across the top. And if you're ready for your project to be preserved, all you have to do is click this button that says Start Preservation. This will initiate sending your project information to Portico. And once you set a project to be preserved, Portico will check your project on a monthly basis for updates, so those changes can be reflected in the preserved data. We have a lot more information about preservation on the stewardship support site. If you click this link under project settings, you can see a lot more details about it. Okay, let's go back to the slides. We have a lot of time for questions, and we can all come back onto camera. Tisha and Lauren have been keeping track of questions that they've been coming in, and they'll help walk us through them. And we'll also give you a couple moments to type in questions. I just wanted to mention again, please remember to take the quick survey that appears when you close the webinar. It will pop up when you leave. And if you'd like to view this recording or share it with colleagues, the link to the recording will be added to that handout within a day or so, probably by tomorrow afternoon. Have any questions come in yet?
Hey, Elizabeth, yes, there's a question about learning how to upload audio files.
Oh, okay. We will cover this in much more detail in the project cataloging webinar that is actually next month, but I can show you quickly since we have some time here on my screen. If I wanted to upload audio files, uploading an audio file works just like any other file that you can upload to stewardship. You would upload media and then find your files. And I'm pretty sure I have an audio file here. Yep. And this might be a large file, so we may not wait for it to upload, but oh, there it is. Once it's uploaded, you can actually customize the thumbnail. This is a special thing about audio and video files. Once it's processed, I can go into this screen and change the thumbnail if I'd like it to change rather than being an audio icon. But as I said, we're going to work on this much more in the project cataloging webinar next month. And I actually have a link for registering for that if you're interested. I'll put it in the chat right now. And that training is going to be June 25th at 10 Eastern. We have, as I said at the beginning, we have monthly webinars this year on different topics, and we have them all listed out on this page on our support site that I'm putting in the chat right now, if you'd like to see what the upcoming sessions are.
Thanks, Elizabeth. We have another question. To confirm that there's no way to preview a project before publishing it. Is that correct? And is that the feature that's being worked on?
Yes, that's one of the aspects of the target mapping that is being worked on. There's a preview button that's going to show you how fields will look before publishing. But currently, you're correct. You can't preview it until you publish content. But I should also state you can always suppress content once published. So if you publish something and you don't like how it appears, let me open a project to show you that has some published content. So if I'm looking at a project and I wanted to suppress anything, I could just select whichever records or all records in my project and then choose to suppress it. So I could do that from the individual item, or even within my project, if I wanted to suppress the entire project, I could choose from this drop-down menu to suppress. You could also make changes to your publishing target setup and then republish if you prefer.
Thanks. Those are the only questions we've had so far.
Okay. Great.
Oh, wait. Of course, as I said that, a few more came in. Hang on one second.
Okay.
So off of the suppression that you just showed, there's a question about, can you suppress a field, or is it just on the item level?
If you wanted to suppress a field, you would just remove it from your target mapping. So if there were a field in your project that you didn't want to publish, let's go into target mapping because I think I could show it better than I can explain it. So we can go back to this project we've been working on. Go to project settings and then targets, select the target and choose map project fields. So if there is a field that I didn't want to publish, so let's say for some reason I didn't want title to publish, I would click that link button and click unmapped and then update it. So that means even if there's data in that field, it will not publish when the record is published to JSTOR. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. And there's another question. This one's about content being set up as a single project, but it comprises several separate collections. They'd like to make each collection a separate project. Is there an easy way to do this?
By make each collection a separate project, I wonder if you mean like a separate published collection on JSTOR. So if you have one project that has several collections and you'd like to publish them into several different collections on JSTOR, Yes, you can just set up multiple publishing targets and then publish the content, the separate content, into the separate targets on JSTOR, so they will appear in separate collections. Another way to do this is if you prefer for them all to be together in one collection, but have sub collections within JSTOR, we have a feature called compilations. And we have a couple of YouTube videos about how to create compilations if you're interested in seeing it. But that's basically setting up a thematic sub collection on JSTOR. And we cover that in the advanced features training if you want to attend that in a couple of months as well, or you can watch the videos that we already have online.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I see thank yous from multiple folks to say thanks for answering questions, but I don't see any new ones right now. Oh, every time I say that, it's like, you know, no, this is great. So this question is about information being mapped in JSTOR for the end user. Let's see. For the date field, does it have any implications on the user experience? For example, if they put 1886 as the if they put
1886,
as the date versus just 1886, does it have any implications on the user experience, or is this to be decided at the institutional level?
This is a really good question. The date fields are tricky because we have multiple date fields available that you can use. So one of them is the generic date field that we have, which is actually a text field, and you can enter anything in that field. So if you wanted to write circa 1886 or late 19th century or 1880s, you could put whatever you want in that, and that won't affect sorting or display. We do also have other kinds of date fields, like we have a calendar date field where you could put an exact date, which might make sense for a publication, and that will affect display. I believe we have information on our support site about this. If you go to our support site and search for dates, hopefully this will get us to the right place. We have information about how to use the various date fields and mapping of them. But I can also follow up with more information in the Q&A that I'm going to put in the handout, because I know we have an article somewhere that references this. So this might not be the right thing right now, but I will definitely follow up in the handout. But it's a really good question. And just if anyone else wants to take a moment, if you're thinking about a question, let me just quickly show you. If you haven't looked at the handout yet, I'll drag it over to this side. So it's a LibGuide that I've created covering the topics of this session. If you scroll all the way down to the frequently asked questions, these questions came from the last time we did this webinar. I'll just add to these in case these are of interest to people today. And all the questions that are asked, I'll add here along with our answers. And I'll put that back in the chat in case anyone missed it. And I'm also getting a note from a colleague that in terms of the dates, field mapping recommendations for each template list the purpose and format of each date field. So looking at your field template will be helpful to understand what content to put in which field. Okay, I'm not sure if any more questions came in.
None have come in, but usually when I say that, another one comes in, but we haven't had one.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to give everyone 10 minutes of their day back. I want to thank everyone for attending, and thank you, Lauren and Tisha, for helping out today as our special guests. And please answer the survey if you have a moment. It just takes like 30 seconds. And hopefully we'll see you next month at the next session. Bye, everyone. Thank you.